This story is titled Happy Anniversary Failure. My fiancée texted after leaving me at the hospital. I sold her engagement ring and emptied our wedding fund. Now her perfect life has shattered. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright, so I, 28 male, need to give you guys some background before I get into the crazy shit that went down. Been with my fiancée, I'll call her Vicky, 27 female, for almost 4 years now. We met at some startup thing where I was trying to network for my coding job, and she was pitching her app idea to anyone who'd listen. She was hot, ambitious, and for whatever reason, she zeroed in on me that night. We exchanged numbers, went on a few dates, and things just clicked. She was always pushing me to be better, get promotions, network more, all that career advancement stuff. I was making good money as a developer, and she had big dreams, but not much cash flow. Fast forward to last year, I proposed with this ridiculous custom ring that cost me $27,000. Yeah, I know, I'm an idiot. But she had specifically pointed out exactly what she wanted. Princess cut diamond with these special side stones that matched her birthstone. I was so whipped I just went with it. The first couple years were actually pretty great. She motivated me to ask for raises I probably wouldn't have had the balls to go for. And I helped her startup get off the ground by investing about $45,000 of my savings. We were a power couple, according to her Instagram. But the last 6 months before all this shit went down, man, things started getting weird. At first, it was small things. If I wanted a quiet night after work, she'd sigh and say, "We're supposed to be a power couple, Jack, not some boring suburban couple who sits around watching Netflix." Then it turned into backhanded compliments. You could do so much more if you just pushed yourself harder. Somewhere along the line, her admiration turned into critique. My ambition was never enough. My job was too stable. My networking wasn't aggressive enough. It was like I was holding her back from some grand destiny. And the weirdest part? She made me feel like I should be grateful that she was still sticking around despite my complacency. Like I'd come home tired after pulling a 12-hour day debugging some nightmare code, and instead of being understanding, she'd make these little jabs about my lack of drive or whatever. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass at my day job and helping with her business on weekends. She also started hanging out more with her friends Dana and Lexi. These two girls always gave me weird vibes. They'd barely acknowledge me when they came over, and they were always taking Vicky out to networking events that somehow involved coming home at 2 a.m. I started getting these killer headaches around that time. Like, bad enough that regular Tylenol wouldn't touch them. I figured it was just stress from work, plus planning this huge wedding Vicky wanted. She'd been adding more expensive shit to the plans every week. Then, one day, I actually blacked out during a meeting at work, just straight up face planted onto the conference table. My buddy Mitch practically carried me to his car and drove me to the ER even though I kept saying I was fine. Turns out I wasn't fine. The doctor came in with this look on his face that immediately made my stomach drop. Brain tumor. And not the let's wait and see kind. The we need to operate immediately kind. Words like aggressive and pressure building got thrown around. They started talking about surgical risks, and I just sat there feeling like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. When I called Vicky from the hospital, her first response wasn't what you'd expect from someone who supposedly loved me. "How long will recovery take? We have the venue booked in 8 weeks. She was just worried about our fucking Instagram-worthy venue getting wasted. Should have seen the red flag right there, but I was too shocked from the diagnosis to really process it. The days after I was officially diagnosed, Vicky wasn't just distant, she was detached. If I talked about my surgery, she'd change the subject. If I mentioned being scared, she'd roll her eyes and tell me not to be dramatic. At one point, she even said, "I swear, you're acting like this is the end of the world. People have surgeries all the time, Jack. It's not like you're special." But what really got me rolling was the way she framed it to herself. "I just never signed up for this," she told Dana on a phone call when she thought I wasn't listening. "It's like the universe is telling me I wasn't meant to settle down yet. I was supposed to be building my future, not dealing with—" She didn't finish the sentence, but I didn't need her to. I already knew what she meant. The week before my surgery was scheduled, they gave me exactly 7 days to get my affairs in order. Vicky got more and more distant. She spent most nights texting or on calls about her business. When she was physically present, she was mentally checked out. I tried talking to her about how scared I was. Like, they were going to cut open my skull and mess with my brain. That's terrifying, right? But every time I brought it up, She'd change the subject to wedding details or drama with her investors, or some shit about the bridesmaids' dresses not matching exactly. The night before surgery, she finally showed her true colors. "I think I need some space tomorrow," she said, while scrolling through Instagram, not even looking at me. "Dana and Lexi suggested we go to this new spa while you're in surgery. Just to clear my head, you know? Hospitals stress me out." I thought she was joking at first. "You're going to a spa while I'm having brain surgery?" She actually rolled her eyes at me. "It's just a few hours, Jack. I can't just sit around waiting and stressing. Besides, you'll be unconscious anyway. It's not like you'll know if I'm there or not." We had a massive fight. I called her selfish. She called me clingy and emotionally manipulative for expecting her to just sit around being miserable while I was in surgery. Like, what the actual fuck? She stormed out and stayed at Dana's that night. The last text I got from her was, "I'll see you after surgery." Maybe. Maybe. Brain surgery with a fucking maybe. My parents drove me to the hospital in the morning. Mom was crying. Dad was doing that thing where he's clearly emotional, but refuses to show it. Mitch showed up too, which was cool since he had to miss work. Right before they wheeled me in for anesthesia, I checked my phone one more time. Nothing from Vicky. My last thought before they put me under was wondering if I'd made a huge mistake building my life around someone who couldn't even be bothered to be there during the scariest moment of it. When the surgery was done, I woke up feeling like absolute dog shit. My head was pounding worse than any hangover I've ever had, and everything was kind of fuzzy around the edges. First thing I noticed was this nurse checking all the machines I was hooked up to. Not Vicky. "Water," I managed to croak out. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sandpaper. The nurse, who I'd later learn was named Maya, gave me some ice chips instead. "Doctor says no water just yet. You did great in surgery, though. They got the whole tumor." I tried to look around the room, but moving my head sent pain shooting through my skull. "My fiancé?" Maya's smile dimmed a bit. "I haven't seen anyone except your parents earlier. They went to get something to eat but said they'd be back soon." I remember thinking maybe Vicky was just parking or in the cafeteria or something. I even forgot we had a fight. I thought she'd be there anyway. I reached for my phone on the side table, almost pulling out my IV in the process. There were messages from Mitch asking how I was doing. One from Mom saying they'd be back in an hour. And then there was Vicky's message. The one that made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut, even through all the pain meds they had me on. "Happy anniversary, failure. Guess this is what I get for wasting 4 years on someone who'll probably be a vegetable anyway." I read it like 5 times, trying to make sense of it. First off, it wasn't even our anniversary. That was next month. Second, the doctors had said the surgery went well. And third, who the fuck says that to someone who just had brain surgery? I must have made some kind of noise because Maya came back over. "Everything okay, honey?" She had this concerned look on her face. I don't know why I showed her my phone. Maybe because I needed someone else to confirm I wasn't hallucinating this shit. "My fiancé. She won't be coming." Maya read the message, and for a second, her professional mask slipped. "Oh, I'm so sorry." I tried texting Vicky back. "I'm out of surgery. Doctor says they got the whole tumor. In case you give a shit." Looking back at our relationship through this new lens, I started seeing all the signs I'd missed. How she'd been pulling away ever since the diagnosis. The way she'd sigh dramatically whenever I mentioned follow-up appointments. How she'd been making these random withdrawals from our joint account without telling me what they were for. When my parents came back, my mom immediately asked where Vicky was. I couldn't bring myself to show them the text, so I just mumbled something about her not feeling well. Mom looked suspicious but didn't push it. Dad just squeezed my hand. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from Vicky. "Don't expect me to play nurse for you. This isn't what I signed up for. I wanted a husband, not a patient." That's when something inside me just hardened. Like something brittle that had been about to break suddenly turned to steel instead. This woman had been with me for 4 years. I'd invested $45,000 in her business. Spent $27,000 on a ring she basically designed herself. I'd stayed up countless nights helping her with business plans and spreadsheets. The down payment on our apartment had come mostly from my savings. All those times I'd held her hair back when she got food poisoning or listened to her cry about work stress or family drama. And her response to me having a life-threatening medical emergency was to go to a fucking spa and then text me that I was a failure? I texted back, "Guess what? I don't expect anything from you anymore. But you might want to check our accounts before you go celebrate your freedom with Dana and Lexi." Then I turned to my parents and told them everything, showed them the texts. Watched my mom's face crumple and my dad get that scary quiet he gets when he's really pissed. They promised to stay with me through recovery. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Mom kept saying, stroking my hand. Don't be, I said. Better to find out now than after the wedding. Dad nodded grimly. She showed her true colors. Now you can move on. But here's the weirdest part. As I laid there with tubes and wires coming out of me, half my head shaved and stitched up like a baseball, I felt this strange sense of relief. Like maybe getting diagnosed with a brain tumor wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. Maybe it was the thing that saved me from tying myself forever to someone who'd bail at the first sign of trouble. The nurse, Maya, came back to check on me as my parents were leaving for the night. She adjusted my pillows and asked if I needed anything for pain. Just the truth, I said, still feeling loopy from the meds. Did I dodge a bullet? I don't know why I even asked her. She looked confused. With the tumor? The surgeon said they got it all. No, with my fiancée. Ex-fiancée, whatever. Maya paused, then gave me a small smile. Speaking as someone who sees a lot of couples during medical crises, yeah, you dodged a armor-piercing round. That made me laugh, which hurt like hell, but felt necessary. Thanks for the honesty. Get some rest, she said. Tomorrow's another day. That night, I kept thinking of the red flags I'd ignored. How Vicky always needed to be the center of attention. How she'd get mad if I didn't immediately respond to her texts, but would ignore mine for hours. How she'd roll her eyes whenever I talked about wanting kids someday. The way she'd make little digs about my friends or family. I woke up around 3 a.m. to a nurse, not Maya, checking my vitals. My phone showed 7 missed calls from Vicky. Guess she'd finally checked our accounts. I turned off my phone completely and went back to sleep, feeling like a weight had been lifted despite the tumor they'd just cut out of my head. The next morning, my buddy Mitch came to visit before work. He took one look at me and said, "You look like shit, but at least they didn't have to shave your whole head. Where's Vicky?" I told him the whole story, showed him the texts, watched his face go from shocked to pissed. What the actual fuck, dude? Who does that? Apparently the woman I was going to marry. Mitch shook his head. Man, I never liked her, but I didn't say anything because you seemed happy. Was I, though? I asked, genuinely wondering. I feel like I was just working my ass off trying to make her happy. That's not the same thing, bro. Mitch squeezed my shoulder. So what's the plan now? I smiled for what felt like the first time in days. I already started it, but I need your help with phase 2. And just like that, I started putting my plan into action. If Vicky thought she could just bail on me during a literal life-threatening situation and still keep all the benefits of our relationship, she was about to learn a harsh lesson about consequences. That was in play on day 2 after brain surgery, while I was feeling slightly less like death warmed over. The nurses assured me that was normal. What wasn't normal was planning an elaborate revenge scheme from a hospital bed. But hey, extraordinary circumstances and all that. My first target was the ring. That 27,000 monstrosity she'd basically designed herself and had been flashing all over her Instagram with captions like, "Blessed and a future wife life." I called my cousin Pete, who works at this fancy jewelry place downtown. I told him about the brain tumor, getting abandoned mid-surgery, and the cruel messages. He pointed out that legally the ring was still mine. If I had a spare key, he could send someone to pick it up today. Luckily, my parents had a spare to our apartment. Pete said he'd send his coworker during Vicky's daily yoga class, which I was paying for, BTW. The dude would grab not just the engagement ring, but also the wedding band I'd already bought that had "Forever Yours" engraved inside. Vicky had no clue that even existed yet. I told Pete that I don't even care if he has to sell it for half what I paid. Just get it gone before she decides to come back for it. He said, "I've got a private collector who might take it off your hands. Won't get full value, but better than nothing." Next up, the money. This was the big one. We had a joint account with $83,000 saved for wedding expenses and honeymoon. Most of it came from my bonuses and overtime, though Vicky liked to act like she was contributing equally. I'd been noticing sketchy withdrawals for months. $900 for cake tastings that somehow always happened while I was at work. $2,500 for venue research during weekends she was with her girlfriends. $3,000 for catering tastings that I was never invited to. Still in my hospital bed, with my mom bringing me ice chips and adjusting my pillows, I logged into our bank account on my phone. My hands were a little shaky, partly from the meds, partly from what I was about to do. "You sure about this, honey?" Mom asked, watching me tap away on my phone. "Never been more sure of anything," I said, and transferred every cent into my personal account that Vicky didn't have access to. The lady from the bank actually called to confirm it was really me making such a large transfer. When I explained I was in the hospital after brain surgery and needed to secure my finances, she didn't ask any more questions. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled up all our shared accounts on my phone, canceled the venue deposit, they owed us a 50% refund, canceled the photographer, lost the deposit but whatever, canceled our honeymoon reservations to Bali, full refund since it was more than 60 days out, removed myself from her phone plan, changed all my passwords to everything, canceled her as an authorized user on my credit card. With each cancellation email confirmation, I felt lighter, like I was cutting away dead weight. I even texted our wedding DJ, who was more my friend than hers, telling him the wedding was off and she left me during surgery. He responded instantly, called it messed up, and said to keep the deposit as a gift, offering help if I needed anything. Throughout all this, Mitch kept checking in via text. He was handling phase 2 of the plan, securing our apartment. Since Vicky had a key and apparently zero moral compass, we didn't trust her not to go ballistic once she realized what I'd done. Mitch was installing a simple security camera system that would alert my phone if there was motion when no one was supposed to be home. I knew the shitstorm would hit once Vicky tried to use one of our shared cards or accounts. Sure enough, about 8 hours after my digital rampage, my phone started blowing up with notifications. Vicky, what did you do? Vicky, why can't I access our wedding fund? Vicky, the venue called me saying you canceled. Vicky, answer your fucking phone, Jack. Vicky, you can't do this to me. Then came the threats. My dad will sue you for that money. Swing, you're making a huge mistake. This is legally my money too. Zrenia, I swear to God, Jack, you'll regret this. I sent back one message. Happy anniversary to you too, failure. Then I turned off my phone and asked the nurse for another pain pill. The one who came in was Maya, the same nurse who'd been there when I got Vicky's first awful text. You look different, she said as she checked my IV. Still in pain, but almost like you're smiling through it. Just took out some trash from my life, I replied. She raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Well, whatever it is, your blood pressure's better than it was this morning. Turns out cutting toxic people out is good for your health, I said, only half joking. Maya laughed. I should put that on a poster for the nurse's station. There was something about her laugh that made me feel better than the pain meds did. It was genuine, not like Vicky's calculated social laugh she'd use at parties or networking events. Later that evening, Pete texted that the dude he sent had successfully retrieved both rings. No sign of Vicky at the apartment, though some of her clothes were gone, so she'd clearly been back at some point. My parents came for evening visiting hours, bringing me real food from outside because hospital food is basically punishment on a tray. While we were eating, my phone started ringing again. Vicky's parents this time. Want me to answer it? Dad offered, a dangerous glint in his eye. My dad's normally the calmest guy ever, but mess with his kids, and he turns into someone you don't want to face. Nah, I said. Let them leave a voicemail. I'm sure it'll be entertaining. Sure enough, Vicky's dad left a message full of legal threats about marital assets. We weren't married, though. And breach of contract. There was no contract. My dad, who's not a lawyer but has dealt with enough of them in his construction business, just laughed. Let them try, he said. The money was from your account originally. The ring is legally yours until marriage. They don't have a leg to stand on. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Dana, Vicky's friend. You're breaking her heart. How could you be so cruel? I didn't bother responding. They'd all seen Vicky's perfectly filtered Instagram posts about our engagement and wedding plans, but none of them were there when I needed actual support. They could all go to hell together. By day 4 post-surgery, I was finally allowed to take short walks around the hospital floor. Maya was there for my first attempt, ready to catch me if my balance went wonky. Go slow, she warned as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. Most people get dizzy their first time up. She was right. The room did a little spin as soon as I stood, and I had to grab onto her arm to steady myself. Whoa there, I got you, she said, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so small. Maya was maybe 5 feet 4 inches, with this dark brown hair usually pulled back in a ponytail, green eyes, and a small nose ring that somehow looked professional despite hospital dress codes. Sorry, I mumbled, embarrassed at how weak I felt. Nothing to be sorry for. You literally had your skull opened a few days ago. I'd be worried if you weren't wobbly. We did a slow lap around the nurse's station, me shuffling like an 80-year-old while clutching my IV pole for support. By the time we made it back to my room, I was exhausted, but weirdly proud of myself. Good job, Maya said, helping me back into bed. Same time tomorrow? It's a date, I replied without thinking, then immediately felt my face get hot. I mean, not a date, just you know what? I'm gonna blame that on the brain surgery. Maya laughed. Blame accepted. Get some rest, Jack. Later that day, Vicky finally showed up. I'd been expecting it eventually. She wasn't the type to just silently accept defeat. She breezed in wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying flowers that still had the hospital gift shop price tag on them. Oh my God, baby, you look awful. were her first words to me. Brain surgery will do that, I said flatly. She took off her sunglasses in this dramatic way, and I could see she'd done her makeup to look like she'd been crying, smudged mascara and all. Look, I know you're upset, and I handled things badly. I panicked, okay? Seeing you so sick scared me. I just stared at her. Was she seriously trying to play the victim here? So your solution was to go to a spa during my surgery and then tell me I'd be a vegetable? I didn't mean that. Her voice went up an octave, the way it always did when she was lying. I was just lashing out because I was scared. And what's this about canceling our wedding? And the money? Jack, that's our money. No, it's my money. Money I earned while you were busy spending it on girls' trips disguised as wedding planning. Her face changed then, the vulnerable act dropping. You'll regret this. Daddy's already talking to his lawyer friends. Good luck with that. Now get out. We need to talk about this like adults. Get out! I shouted, wincing as pain shot through my skull. The door opened and Maya stepped in, clearly having heard the commotion. Everything okay in here? Sir, your heart rate is elevated. I think you need to rest now. She looked pointedly at Vicky. Vicky glanced between us, her eyes narrowing. Really? The nurse? That didn't take long. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Maya said, her voice professional but firm. This isn't over, Jack, Vicky hissed, grabbing her designer purse. And you, she said to Maya. Enjoy my leftovers. After she stormed out, Maya checked my vitals, her hands gentle but clinical. You okay? Sorry about that, I mumbled, embarrassed by Vicky's behavior and the leftovers comment. Trust me, I've seen worse family drama in this job. She adjusted my pillows. Your vitals are actually better than they were this morning, despite that scene. Sometimes removing stress is the best medicine. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Not just as a nurse, but as a woman with kind eyes who'd stood up for me when I needed it. Thanks, Maya. Over the next few days, Maya became a bright spot in my recovery. She wasn't officially my nurse all the time, but she'd stop by even when she wasn't assigned to me, sometimes just to chat for a few minutes during her break. I learned she had a rescue dog named Pancake, was working on her master's degree in nursing education, and had moved to the city 3 years ago after breaking up with her college boyfriend, who, in her words, turned out to be more attached to his Xbox than to me. Meanwhile, Vicky had escalated from texts to having her dad call me. Mr. Hotshot Attorney threatened legal action over the stolen wedding funds. I had my dad, who's no lawyer but knows how to sound like one, explain that all the money came from my account originally, and there was no legal contract stating otherwise. They're bluffing, Dad assured me after one particularly heated call. If they had a legal leg to stand on, they'd have filed something by now instead of just making threats. A week after surgery, the neurosurgeon cleared me to go home, though I'd need regular checkups and some physical therapy for the balance issues I was still having. As Maya helped me gather my things on discharge day, I found myself not wanting to leave, which was crazy. Who wants to stay in a hospital? So, I said, trying to sound casual. I guess this is it. For the hospital stay, yes, she replied, handing me my prescription. But you'll be back for follow-ups. Will you be here? For the follow-ups, I mean. She smiled, and told me her schedule and when she'd be available during her work. Good to know, I said, suddenly very interested in organizing the pill bottles in my bag. There was an awkward pause, neither of us quite making eye contact. Listen, Maya finally said, this is super unprofessional and feel free to say no, but would it be okay if I checked in on you? Just to see how you're doing with recovery? My heart did this weird flippy thing that definitely wasn't a surgical complication. You mean like a home visit? No, not officially, just as a friend. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, looking unsure for the first time since I'd met her. If you want, no pressure. We exchanged numbers, and as she programmed hers into my phone, I noticed she was blushing slightly. My dad came in with the wheelchair that was hospital policy for discharges, and our moment was broken. As Maya pushed me toward the elevator, she leaned down slightly and whispered, "For what it's worth, you're way too good for that ex of yours. And I'm glad the tumor brought you to our floor, even though I wish you never had to go through any of this." I turned to look at her, surprised by the admission. "Me too," I said softly. To both parts. The elevator doors opened, breaking the moment. Maya handed me off to a different nurse for the final exit process, giving me a small wave as the doors closed between us. In the car ride home, Dad kept giving me these knowing looks. "What?" I finally asked. "Nothing," he said, smiling. "Just thinking maybe some good things can come from bad situations." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I was actually looking forward to what came next. Coming home was weird as hell. My apartment felt both familiar and strange at the same time. Some of Vicky's stuff was gone, but plenty remained, like she wanted to keep one foot in the door. My parents tried to convince me to stay with them, but I needed to be in my own space. Mitch crashed on my couch the first few nights to make sure I didn't fall and crack my skull open again. Security cameras are all set up, he told me, showing me the app on my phone. Motion alerts will go to both of us. The first few days were rough, mostly sleeping, feeling sick from meds, or battling headaches. On day 3, Maya texted, checking in, and we started talking regularly. At first, it was casual, hospital stories, my recovery, but it soon got deeper. She shared how her parents' divorce pushed her into a helping profession, and I opened up about my upbringing. 2 weeks post-discharge, she asked to stop by. I panicked, trying to make my place look less like a recovery ward, which was pointless. She arrived with soup and movies, joking about my Netflix burnout. Sitting together, the tension was obvious. Halfway through a movie, I asked if nurses could date ex-patients. She said yes, then hesitated. Was this dating? I told her I hoped so. She smiled, tucking her hair behind her ear, and our first careful kiss felt more real than anything I'd had with Vicky in years. Meanwhile, Vicky kept trying to worm her way back in, leaving voicemails, having her friends reach out, even showing up at my parents' house once. When she discovered I'd changed the locks, she sent a barrage of texts calling me childish and immature. I kept all her messages but never responded. The silence drove her crazier than any comeback could have. And just when things were going awesome with Maya and my recovery was on track, Hurricane Vicky decided to make landfall again. I came home from work one day to find my apartment door slightly open. Immediately got that sick feeling in my gut. I pushed the door open slowly, half expecting to see some random burglar. What I found was so much worse. My clothes were scattered everywhere, most of them cut to shreds. My laptop screen was shattered, and written on my bedroom mirror in red lipstick, that weird expensive brand Vicky always used, were the words, "This is what happens when you steal my future." I stood there just trying to process what I was seeing when I heard a noise from the kitchen, like something falling. Grabbed a broken lampstand as a weapon and moved toward the sound. Found Vicky and Dana ransacking my kitchen drawers. They were so busy pulling everything out they hadn't even heard me come in. "Looking for something?" I asked, my voice weirdly calm. They both whipped around. Vicky looked absolutely wasted, eyes wild and makeup smeared. Dana just looked terrified. "Where is it?" Vicky demanded, slurring her words. "Where's what? My sanity? You took that a while ago. My grandmother's sapphire. I know you took it out of the ring before you sold it." I almost laughed. "The ring you designed yourself? That never had your grandmother's anything in it? That ring?" Her face got all twisted. "You ruined everything. We were supposed to get married, have the perfect life. You left me during brain surgery," I said quietly. "You called me a failure when I was lying in a hospital bed. And now you break into my home and destroy my stuff? Are you insane?" Dana started tugging on Vicky's arm. "We should go, now." But Vicky was way past rational thought. She came at me, swinging her designer purse like a weapon. I stepped aside and she stumbled, crashing into the counter. "I'm calling the cops," I said, pulling out my phone. "Do it!" she screamed. "I'll tell them you hit me. Who do you think they'll believe?" That's when I remembered the security cameras Mitch had installed. Thank God for paranoid best friends. "I think they'll believe the security footage," I said, pointing to the small camera in the corner of the kitchen. The blood drained from both their faces. I dialed 911 and reported a break-in. Vicky and Dana tried to make a run for it, but my neighbor Todd, cool older dude, retired cop, heard the commotion and blocked the hallway until police arrived like 15 minutes later. The cops took one look at my trashed apartment and the security footage and arrested both women for breaking and entering, vandalism, and attempted assault in Vicky's case. As they were being led away in handcuffs, Vicky kept screaming that I'd ruined her life. Nah, I thought. You did that all by yourself. The aftermath was a huge pain in the ass. Had to file insurance claims, give statements to the police, replace a bunch of stuff. But the worst part was just knowing that someone I once loved could be so full of hate. The legal stuff moved pretty fast after that. With the security footage, Vicky couldn't deny what she'd done. Her parents tried to make it go away with money, but there were limits to what even their connections could fix. In the end, she had to plead guilty to lesser charges to avoid jail time, but still got hit with fines, probation, a restraining order, and mandatory counseling. The cherry on top? Her startup investors pulled out after the arrest made the local business section. Rising tech entrepreneur arrested in ex-fiancée revenge plot. Turns out investors don't love backing someone with obvious impulse control issues and a fresh criminal record. Who knew? Through mutual friends, I heard her parents had to bail her out financially, using money they'd saved for her sister's college fund. Vicky had to move back home with them. Her dreams of being a tech hotshot totally derailed. Meanwhile, Maya and I got closer through all this chaos. She saw me at my absolute worst, not just physically after surgery, but emotionally drained from Vicky's craziness. And she stuck around anyway. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, I admitted to her one night, about a month after the break-in, for you to decide this is all too much drama. That's not how this works, she said, curling up against me on her couch. The right person doesn't bail when things get hard. 6 months after Vicky trashed my place, Maya and I decided to move in together. Into a new apartment, fresh start, no ghosts from my past. We adopted another dog to keep her pup Pancake company, a three-legged shepherd mix we named Tripod, Maya's weird sense of humor at work. Life was finally good again. Better than before, actually. But Vicky? She wasn't done quite yet. Edit. Thanks for all the support, guys. Means a lot.